again everybody. So by now you should have watched my video on revenue. You should also have had a look at the little video I've drawn for you about how to draw the revenue curves. So what we're going to look at next is move on to the start of the at least half the year's worth of work called theory of the firm or market structures. And the first one we're going to look at in this short video is about perfect competition. So in perfect competition there's a number of key criteria that have got to be met for us to say that this model of perfect competition is what we can see in the real world. And that's really important. Remember, we look around us at what we can see in the world around us and how businesses are behaving, and we use our models, our economic models, to say how close what we can see is to matching one of the models. So let me give you this example. Okay, and this is what I would normally do under normal circumstances in class, is I'd ask the whole class to imagine that they work for a paper company, and the paper company is trying to get a big contract from college in order to supply college with file paper. Now you know as conscientious students that students use lots and lots and lots of file paper. So this is a really big contract that the company is potentially going to get. All of you in the class represent a different company making file paper, but the costs of manufacturing are the same for all of you. It doesn't matter which company you work for, it costs the same to make this file paper because you're using all the same technology and the same materials. So just to keep the numbers easy, let's imagine it costs 1 pence per sheet in order to make file paper. So my question to you is, what would the lowest price be that you would be prepared to sell me file paper for per sheet if I was placing an order for hundreds of thousands of sheets? Right, so hopefully you've had a think about it, and maybe you're saying things like 2 pence or 3 pence or 1.5 pence, whatever it is. However, in class, I would be pretty confident we'd have a bidding war going on between a couple of you, and we'd eventually reach a point where people were saying something like 1.01 or 1.0001, and effectively what we end up with is the price goes down all the way down to the costs of manufacturing, so that there's no surplus revenue left over. Once the costs are paid, all the revenue is gone. The firm's not making a loss, but it hasn't got any money left over. And there's a really important term in economics. I'm going to write it on the slide here. We would call that normal profit. Okay, so where the firm covers its costs but doesn't have any money left over, we'd call that a normal profit. Now the problem this firm had, or you in that scenario had, is that all I would do as a customer is say to you, well look, why would I buy it off you when that person there is doing it slightly cheaper? Okay, and the thing that's really important in this market is that to me all the paper is the same. It doesn't make any difference where I get it from. File paper is file paper. And that's one of the big features of perfect competition. This one at the top, the homogeneous product. The word homogeneous means identical, not a bit like or not quite similar, but it's identical. So not only was the product identical, but there were no real barriers for firms to enter this. Making paper might be a relatively straightforward thing. So it's not overly complicated. You don't need lots and lots of super advanced technology. There'd be a lot of firms. If we were doing this in the classroom, imagine everybody in the class represents a different firm. There were lots of firms I could have bought from, and as the customer, I've got no brand loyalty. I don't have a favourite brand of file paper because it's all the same. In reality, what you know is that actually some file paper is slightly different. So you can get file paper with 3 holes punched in, or 4 holes punched in, or 2 holes punched in, red line down the side as a margin, no margin, wide rule, thin rule. All of those features are ways that the firm is trying to avoid that top one, the homogeneous product. Having a homogeneous product is bad news if you are the firm, because it means customers will simply swap a different firm for you if you're not the best price. So firms will always try and make their products a little bit different. Okay, so what that means is that the firm is a price taker. It has no control over the price at all. It simply has got to sell the products at the market price. If it charged a price above anybody else, then it will lose all its customers. Okay, and we call that perfect competition. So here's a small table for you. We're going to go through this table together. Okay, if I can get it to come back. Oops. Okay, so here's the table I was looking for. What we've got then is a price of £2. If I have 0 sales and it's £2 a product, obviously I've got no revenue, and my total revenue divided by that would be 0. It would be infinity actually, but we call it 0 because we're not got any money coming in. And you can see what's going to happen. If I sell 1 for £2, total revenue is £2. 2 at £2 is 4, and so on till I fill the table up. Then my average is the total divided by the quantity. So £2 divided by 1 sold is 2. £4 divided by 2 is 2. £6, but I've sold 3 of them, means on average they were £2 each. Okay, so it's £2 all the way down. Now the marginal revenue from the previous lesson, if you remember, is the change in total. So we go from 0 to 2, that gives us a marginal revenue of 2. From 2 to 4, it's a marginal revenue of 2. 4 to 6 is a marginal revenue of 2, and so on. Now what we've ended up here is a bit of a strange situation where our total revenue data is actually identical to marginal revenue. Remember, quantity here is the x-axis. So if we were to draw a diagram, this will be our x-axis with quantity, and we'd be plotting total and marginal revenue, and average revenue here. Okay, not total revenue, that was wrong. Average and marginal revenue. So if we have a look what that was going to look like, average revenue was constant at £2, but also marginal revenue. So in this situation, under perfect competition, our average revenue and marginal revenue is identical at £2. It doesn't make any difference. It's £2 all the way along, no matter how many we sell. And this is a bit odd, because you might be saying, well, if they put the price up, people will go to other places that sell the same thing. We get that. But why don't they just lower the price to sell even more of them? The reason why they wouldn't lower the price to sell even more of them is, remember that our firm here is a small firm, and it might be dealing with hundreds of units. Okay, it's only a small firm, but the whole market will be probably thousands of firms like ours, and the total output across the whole market could run into millions. So there's no point the firm lowering the price, because it can sell as many as it can make at £2. If it sold them at £1, it could still only sell as many as it could make. So it would keep the price at £2. It would sell out all its stock at £2. There's no point lowering the price, because it can't sell any more, because it is only a tiny part of the bigger market. Okay, so in perfect competition, what we have is a situation where the demand curve, remember that's what we call the AR curve, it's the demand curve, is actually the same as the marginal revenue curve. And that is very unusual. It only happens in this one particular market structure. Okay, so to recap, perfect competition exists where there are lots and lots of small firms. It's easy for new firms to come and join the market, or if they want to, firms can leave the market. Customers are faced with lots of firms making an identical or homogeneous product, and they've got no preference for one over the other, so there's no brand loyalty. And for that reason, each firm becomes a price taker. It has to sell its products according to what the market price is.